Good morning, world. Welcome to the breakdown. Let's get right to it. As I always say, take care of your family, take care of your life, take care of what you need to take care of. Keep priority number one. If you get confused about that, you'll get confused about everything. Welcome. Let's get right to it. I know a lot of people's been asking me what's my opinion on what's happening. When I'm saying what's happening with the war. Before I give my opinion on what's happening and what's gonna happen, based on history, based on my own knowledge, I studied this stuff in college, I spent a lot of time on this stuff. First, it doesn't matter what war is going on outside. If you cannot control the war inside your head, none of it really matters. I always tell you guys that outside. It doesn't matter what's happening outside. If you cannot control the war inside your mind, that one-on-one war, it doesn't really matter what happened. It's going to be destruction for you anyway. You're going to self-destruct. So before we start worrying about what's happening in the world, we must control what's happening in our own world. We must understand what's happening in our own world. Again, if you cannot win the battle within yourself, the battle outside doesn't really matter. I always tell you guys that. And it's the most important thing in life. It will be the most important thing you need to understand in your life. I don't care what your life situation is, whether you're well off financially, whether you are not in a favorable position, whether anything, if you do not win that one-on-one battle, which is the battle within your own self, whether the battle for your soul, whether it's the battle for your conscience, you will lose no matter what. At some point, you will go down. I don't care what you do, how high you get up, the higher you go, the bigger the fall. If you win the battle within yourself, it really doesn't matter what's happening outside. Let's get to the war. So, before I give my, and it's basically, it's my opinion, but it's really not, it's not just an opinion. It's a very informed opinion. So, to fully understand the war that's happening right now between the U.S., Israel, and Iran, you cannot just start in 2022. You cannot even just start in 1980. You have to go back further than that. Understand the history of Iran. To understand the history of Iran, you must understand the history of the Middle East, which is all connected to European history. And don't get me wrong, Iran is one of the oldest countries in the world. Iran is started in like 3 millennium before BC. So even before that, it's one of the oldest civilizations. If you're talking about the United States, it's a young country as compared to Iran. United States, 1776. So it's a very young country. If you compare Israel, Israel happened after World War II. So you're talking about Israel is a country that is less than 100 years old. The region is old, but Israel as a country itself, it's very young. So if you go back to history of Iran, all the way back to Genghis Khan, all the way back to Napoleon, Iran has faced all those battles. Iran has always been fighting for its survival. Okay, I'm gonna try to give you guys quick rundown. So the Middle East was divided by the European powers, which is mostly the British, the French. It's the same situation you have in Africa. It's the same situation in what you have in Latin America. They did not take into consideration culture, language, as it's divided in them. When the British left, those borders states. So in them, that's one part. The second part to that is in the Middle East, just because, again, it's the same thing in Africa, just because everybody look the same, it doesn't mean they are the same. So in order to understand that, you need to understand the different faction in the Muslim community. You got the Shia Muslim, you got the Sunni Muslim, and you also got the Kurds. Not all the same. Iran does not consider themselves an Arab country. Iraq is a Persian country. Iraq come out of the Persian Empire. So again, all of that, which is why you see all the other factions in the Middle East, majority of them are U.S. allies, against Iran, Saudi Arabia, UAE, all of them. And then you have to take Israel, which is a Jewish country. So British, and the British always had control of Iran. So when the British left, the American basically just replaced the British. So after World War II, the U.S. had full control of Iran oil, which oil become one of the biggest necessities in the world because of all the machinery, all the airplanes, everything runs on oil. So the U.S. wanted that. So they overthrew the Iranian government and put in their own government, which the government again was overthrown with the current government that we have now, Khomeini, which is the guy the U.S. just killed. The U.S. and their allies in Saudi Arabia, Iran, if I remember correctly, it's a Shia, majority Shia, and then the other one is Sunni Muslim, and then in Iraq you got the Kurds. So Israel and Iran, Israel, in the beginning, Iran did not care about the survival of Israel. The war that Israel had was with the Arab countries. Iran stayed out of it originally. But now it seems like both Iran and Israel want the destruction of one another. The reason why Iran is the major power in the Middle East. Okay, fast forward, blah, 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 all the way to Trump, right? That's what you have. Basically, the U.S. was like, Iran cannot acquire nuclear weapons. But we all understand the hypocrisy that comes with that. Israel have nuclear weapons, and so on and so on. They're telling Iran. But Iran also believe that, in their opinion, in order for them to survive, they need nuclear weapons. They cannot survive. They are surrounded by enemies with countries who want their destruction. The U.S. since World War II come out as a major superpower. So the U.S. basically wanted that oil in the Middle East. They established themselves in Saudi Arabia. They started working with a construction company with a guy by the name of Mohammed, which is the father of Osama bin Laden. Osama bin Laden did not like what happened in that the West, which a lot of Arabs consider the devil, which is basically the opposite of the culture. Osama bin Laden watched his dad just basically started working with the Americans and the British. Osama bin Laden, his dad had like 48 kids or some ridiculous like that. Osama bin Laden become opposite to that. Then he was trying to get help from the Arab countries, did not get it. He ended up, the Soviet Union were fighting the Afghanistan people, and so Osama bin Laden decided to join that fight, but he's more of a fight for the Muslim. He's not for a specific country. And so the U.S. took the side of Osama bin Laden, helped fight the Soviet Union, because the Soviet Union at the time were the #1 enemy of the U.S. So the U.S. used Osama bin Laden to fight the war. Basically, the Afghan people defeated the Soviet Union. And then now Osama bin Laden, which his war was always for the Arabs, so U.S. was not his friend. U.S. used him, and then he accepted the help because he needed at the time. And then after that happened, U.S. put them on his number one threat list. And then we know the rest. Then you have the war in Afghanistan, the war in Iraq, and so on, so on. Iran, which not understand that it needs to survive, that created a bunch of paramilitary groups that are spread around the Middle East. So Iran is not set up to fight you in a war head on. They're set up to fight proxy war. Now we forward to the guy we have in power in the US now, Donald Trump. So Donald Trump took power. Donald Trump, I believe Israel was always wanted this war with Iran, because Israel also understand that they need to survive. They are surrounded by non-friendly countries, so they need to survive. Israel always wanted the war, and Iran always knew the war was coming. They just didn't know when, so they've been preparing themselves. They have a few test runs after all the incident over the last few years where Iran bombed them and where the Israelis bombed them in combination with the Americans, so they got themselves ready. So now Trump took power. Trump understand that if he attacks Iran right away, you're going to have a situation, oil prices is going to jack up. So Trump decided, well, invade Venezuela first, get the oil first there, and then choke the Cubans, and then Russia is already occupying Europe. and so on, so on, so on. So Trump took advantage. He was playing chess the entire time, took advantage, and decided to go along with the Israeli and attacking Iran. This is where we are now. So here's the dangerous part of this war for many of us to understand. This has the potential to be World War III. Because now, Iran understood they cannot face the U.S. military on a head-to-head battle. But you have two other powers that are standing by watching this. And they're definitely going to participate in the war. How they're going to participate in it, they're not going to respond in the way we expect them to respond, by standing behind Iran and with weapons and so on, which is China and Russia. Remember what the U.S. did to Russia and Europe and Ukraine. The U.S. supported the Ukrainian, funded the Ukrainian, and basically fighting a proxy war with the Ukrainian. The Chinese also got their eyes on Taiwan. Their biggest competitor is the U.S. also. So the Chinese and the Russians could do two things in this war. They could fight a proxy war with the U.S. by funding Iran, which is going to drag this war out for months and for months. Once the U.S. realize they're losing, the first option is probably going to be to use the Kurds in Iraq to attack Iran, go across the border to attack Iran. That's going to drag the Kurds in it, in Iraq on it. And then in Iraq, you got two factions. So you got the Shias, you got the Sunnis. So that could drag Iraq into the war. Israel is already into the war. Majority of the countries in the Middle East is already into the war. So now the Chinese, the U.S. is spending so much money on this war. Iran is fighting drone warfare. U.S. is shooting at Iran with million and billion-dollar weapons. Eventually, this is going to cripple the U.S. economy. It's already going to cripple. Oil prices going to jack up, which is going to affect the stock market. Because remember, Iran controlled the Hormuz Strait, which is that stretch of water that go wide between Iran, Saudi Arabia, and Yemen, and all that. Iran controlled that. If they choked it, all the Middle Eastern countries cannot send their oil to Europe, United States, and America. The only ships Iran are allowed to go to are Chinese ships, Russian ships, and North Korean ships. So that the longer this go, the longer Iran can drag the U.S. out into a war that's going to last forever. We know what Iran is good at. They have one of the biggest drone programs in the world, and they're also good at cyber warfare. U.S. has the biggest military in the world, the most powerful military. It's the military set up to fight the new type of war that Iran is going to fight. Remember what happened to the Vietnam War. The U.S. was not ready for guerrilla warfare. Is the U.S. ready to fight this new type of war Iran is going to fight, which is a drag-out war? They're going to continue to overwhelm you with drones and missiles, and the U.S. is going to keep responding. Eventually, the U.S. economy is gonna cripple. And then when the soldiers begin to come home in body bags, how the Americans people are going to react to this? Iran, Russia, and China can't keep supporting this, just like the Europeans are supporting Ukraine, and the United States was dragging the war in Russia, was keeping Russia in a war of nutrition for years. So you can have Ukraine, Russia number 2 with Iran, Israel, and Iraq. The problem is, at which point other country decides to jump in. If anybody else jump in, the Chinese and the Russians are going to jump in. Remember, Russia and China are not really friends with anybody. It's just like the U.S. The whatever is in the benefits right now, at which point defending Iran will be in the benefits. And that's where we are. And guys, so my full personal opinion, I think World War III started 2 years ago. And we're expecting World War III to be like World War II or World War I, where tanks are driving down the street. I think we're finding a lot of proxy wars. And this is the Ukraine, Russia, and Israel, US, and Iran is just one of many wars happening in the world. And so I think we are in the first few phases of World War III. Could this have the potential to speed up the process? I think it will. Because right now, I think that one of the weaknesses of this war is U.S. can find themselves in a three-front war, where they got Russia, Europe, Iran, Israel, U.S., and now what happened if the Chinese decides to invade Taiwan? Remember, the U.S. supposed to defend Taiwan. Now, can the U.S. go after the Chinese? After right now, the U.S. is weakened. They're burning to their munitions. They're burning to a lot of stuff. Can they face that situation? And you still got the Cuba situation. What happened is somebody take an investment in Cuba. Can the U.S. defend whom? Remember, the U.S. never had to defend whom. That's one of the advantages of the U.S. They never had to defend their home front. The only thing they had to defend was Pearl Harbor, which is not necessarily on the mainland. It's different when you have to fight at home. And so, guys, keep your eyes on this. Again, let me repeat this. None of this really matters. I wouldn't pay attention to any of this if I was you, because you do not have any control of it. The only thing you need to control the war within yourself. If you control yourself, none of this really matters. There will always be a war outside. The world is being governed by people who are in chaos within themselves. It's people who are chasing money, who are chasing fame, who are chasing power. That's who runs the world. If you want to call it the devil, call it whatever you want. The world will always be in chaos because of the people who are in control of the world, or because of the powers who are in control of the world. Think about it. We run into billion-dollar ammunition. We don't have money to feed the poor. We don't have money to build school. We don't have money to take care of the sick. So that's the kind of people who are controlling the world. We are living in reverse. Everything is in reverse. What should be is not. What shouldn't be is. So, again, take control of your own self. If you take control of yourself, what happened outside will happen outside. Well, you'll be in a better place to handle it. Happy Sunday.